backtracking, to backtrack a bit, backtrack all the way back. Today I'm going to backtrack a bit and talk about the last set of books that I own, which are actually about the philosophy of logic. Now, I'm not a philosopher. My partner studied philosophy, as I said before, for his degree. But I kind of wanted to understand a bit more about that whole thing, so he got me some presents. They're very different books. One of them is a work of philosophy published in 1921 by Wittgenstein, and the other is a comic made about Bertrand Russell's life and his work. But I'm going to try and talk about them and kind of link them together a bit, because there are similarities in the time and the culture and the society. So I'm going to talk about Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. This one. It's written in a format that's quite strange to me. It's written as numbered points rather than, it's not prose exactly. So you can kind of see it's got like all these numbers down the side, and you go from like 1, 1.1, 1.12, that kind of thing. So you have to remember exactly where you are in the train of thought and what the original point was to be able to really understand the book. So I got all the way up to point 5.2341, which by that point I was kind of lost, I will admit it. I kind of grasp some of the concepts just from having discussed them before with my partner, but when you're reading this, it takes it to completely another level. I love struggling with it in a weird way. I love the challenge of this book. It's just like saying, oh, you're not going to understand me, so don't even try. I haven't finished it, basically. I know enough about this book to know how this book was ended, which makes me laugh in a way, because it goes through and tries to categorize and describe all of this way of thinking and this way of perceiving reality, and then it says, what we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence. You know, if you can't describe it, just don't talk about it. The second book is Logicomix, which I found a lot easier to read because it's a graphic novel, and it didn't go into so much detail about the work, but it went into a lot of detail about Bertrand Russell's life. So Bertrand Russell was a philosopher who dealt with logic and maths and produced a lot of his work around sort of the 1900s, around the same time that Wittgenstein was publishing works, and Wittgenstein was slightly younger than him. But they both dealt with very similar subjects in slightly different ways. And Wittgenstein also kind of tore down Russell's work a little bit, a big bit, and so this book kind of goes into that as well. I find it really interesting seeing the social aspects and sort of the cultural aspects of both the work at that time and the way that the characters interact with each other. This is kind of elaborated in certain ways. There is exaggeration to a certain extent because of the nature of the story, and it's told as a story within a story. It's told from this perspective of a group of people who are making a comic about Bertrand Russell, and then they're trying to find out sort of the truth and the perspective that they want to kind of take with this comic. So you see all these different opinions and different ways of thinking. It goes through the main points of his life and how they affected him in the way of thinking, and some of the illustration is quite simplistic. Sometimes it was a bit of a struggle for me to get past the illustration because it's not quite my style, but I did really like some pages of this book, like this one. It really kind of represents the way that the character feels at the time, and there's quite a lot of sort of pathetic fallacy in this book, which is always a favourite sort of literary use of mine. I just think it's one of those strange ways that people associate nature and people and the way that they kind of fit them together. So Wittgenstein actually appears in Logicomix as a character. I began reading Wittgenstein's work before I began reading Logicomix, but after reading Logicomix I could really see, when I went back to Wittgenstein's work, I could really see his character coming out in the work. It was really strange. So that kind of helped in a way. And so I think actually I really enjoy reading the two books together. It's an experience. If you really want to wrestle with logic and philosophy and that kind of thing, I would recommend reading them alongside each other. I think that's all I have to say about those books, and I went on a massive tangent, so I'm sorry about that. So until future videos, bye!